asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going.
The woman you just watched is a former public defender who spent her career representing people the system wanted to forget. She knows exactly what it looks like when a powerful institution decides someone doesn't matter. On February 11, 2026, Epstein survivors filled the hearing room. They had never once met with Pam Bondi's Justice Department, not one of them. Bondi sat 5 feet away and apologized to them in her opening statement, then spent the next 5 hours refusing to answer for why their cases were buried while powerful men's names stayed redacted. Jasmine Crockett was the one who said it plainly. These are survivors, not victims. They have more moral clarity in their pinky fingers than the entire DOJ. That's not a soundbite. That's the most accurate legal assessment in the room. Don Lemon was arrested.
Journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about
under this attorney general. A judge had already rejected an earlier attempt. Georgia Fort was arrested. Homes of journalists were raided. The same department that pursued journalists could not get a single political prosecution past a grand jury or a federal court. Every case collapsed. Courts ruled the appointing prosecutor was illegally serving. Indictments dismissed. Meanwhile, the Epstein survivors raised their hands, every one of them, when asked if the DOJ had given them a single meeting. Bondi was in the room. She saw every hand go up. Arresting journalists, protecting powerful men's names in sex trafficking files, failing every political prosecution attempted. That is the record Crockett read aloud. Not one item.
The president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number 1, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number 2, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice
was disputed. Crockett was careful with her language. She said Trump was one of the most named people in the files. She cited the specific FBI investigator notes. She explicitly said she was not calling him a pedophile. What she did say, at least 5,000 files contain his name, his wife's name, or Mar-a-Lago. An FBI note describes Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet Trump. Those documents are sourced. They are in the released files. The DOJ's job was to pursue the investigation. Instead, it redacted the names of wealthy men while leaving survivors exposed. Thomas Massie, a Republican, caught it happening in real time. The DOJ fixed it in 40 minutes. That is not an accident. That is policy. And the AG who set that policy was fired 9 weeks after this hearing, not for protecting anyone, but for failing to prosecute Trump's enemies fast enough. Pam Bondi's answer to everything.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind you
time
that
belongs
you
to the
refuse to
gentleman
even
from
acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank you. General, did you have anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph, from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan, from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Crockett said was a stack of mugshots, immigrant criminals, names and nationalities read aloud, while the women Epstein trafficked sat 3 feet behind her. Crockett cut through it immediately. Convict the people who raped these women first, then talk about your border numbers. Bondi couldn't do it, because the survivors behind her had never been given a single meeting with her department, because the powerful men in those files still have their names protected, because the DOJ's actual record under her leadership was arrested journalists, dismissed indictments, gutted career prosecutors, and handed Epstein binders to influencers. She's gone now. Trump fired her April 2nd. But the subpoena investigating her mismanagement of those files is still open. Acting AG Blanche, Trump's former defense attorney, says he'll leave the Epstein matter to Congress. Nothing Crockett warned about in that room has been fixed. The DOJ is now led by the man who kept Trump out of prison. The survivors are still waiting. The names are still redacted. If this matters to you, share it, subscribe, and ask one question in the comments. If Bondi was fired for not going far enough, how far is far enough?